everyone, and welcome back to the English Speaking Nerds channel. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. I'm your lovely host, Maya.
And I'm John. This is the place where we don't just teach you textbook English, we dive deep into the real stuff, the idioms, the culture, the nuance, and the way people actually speak when they aren't reading from a script.
Exactly! If you love learning English that connects you to the world, please support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to English Speaking Nerds right now. It helps us keep the lights on and the coffee brewing, which, as you know, is absolutely essential for our deep conversations.
It really is. And speaking of deep conversations, today we're tackling something that is both universal and deeply personal. We're talking about your family.
Talking about your family. Now, this might sound like the easiest topic in the world, right? Everyone has a family, everyone knows their relatives, but when you actually try to describe your family in English, especially to someone from a different culture, it becomes this beautiful, complex challenge.
It absolutely does, because family is loaded with emotion, history, culture, and unspoken rules. When someone asks, "Tell me about your family," they're not just asking for a list of names, they're inviting you into your most personal space.
And stick around until the end because we're going to talk about something really important: how to set boundaries when people ask about family topics you're not comfortable discussing. It's going to be a meaningful one today.
So let's dive in. Maya, when someone asks, "Tell me about your family," what's your first instinct?
Oh, that's interesting. My first instinct is actually to calculate. I know that sounds cold, but it's true. I immediately think, how much do I share? Do they want the happy version or the real version? Are they just being polite or do they genuinely care?
Calculation, yes. This is exactly what I call family narrative selection. When someone asks about your family, your brain immediately chooses which story to tell based on the context and your relationship with that person.
Family narrative selection. I love that term. Explain it for everyone.
Family narrative selection is when you consciously or unconsciously choose how to present your family. You have multiple versions of your family story: the polite version, the honest version, the funny version, the complicated version. Which one you share depends on who's asking and why.
That's so accurate. And there's this immediate pressure that comes with the question, especially if your family situation is complicated. We call it family description anxiety.
Ooh, explain family description anxiety.
Family description anxiety is when you feel nervous or uncomfortable describing your family because it doesn't fit the traditional picture. Maybe your parents are divorced. Maybe you're estranged from relatives. Maybe your family structure is unconventional. You worry about being judged or having to explain things.
That is so real, because in English-speaking cultures, especially in casual conversation, people expect a certain kind of answer. They expect you to say, "I have a mom, a dad, and 2 siblings, and we're all close." When your reality is different, it can feel awkward.
Exactly. And that's where we get into what I call family presentation performance.
Family presentation performance. Define that for us.
Family presentation performance is when you present your family in a way that feels socially acceptable, even if it's not completely honest. You might say, "My family is great," when the truth is more complicated. You simplify things to avoid uncomfortable questions or judgments.
It's a form of self-protection. And honestly, it's completely understandable. Not every conversation needs to be deeply honest, especially with strangers or acquaintances.
Right, which brings us to something crucial: the vocabulary itself. You can't just say, "I have family." You need words that help you describe relationships, personalities, and dynamics. We call this family description vocabulary.
That's essential. Family description vocabulary includes phrases like "I'm close to," "I get along with," "I come from," "I was raised by," "I have a complicated relationship with." These phrases give you flexibility and nuance.
And native speakers use them without thinking. But for learners, there's often a gap between knowing your family and knowing how to describe them in English. It's what I call the family translation gap.
The family translation gap. That's powerful. I've seen students who can describe complex family dynamics in their native language, but in English, they can only say, I have one brother. He is nice. It doesn't capture the reality.
It really doesn't, because family relationships are rich and complicated, and you need language that reflects that complexity, which is why we're doing this episode. We want to give you the tools to describe your family authentically.
So let's start by talking about the different types of family conversations, because understanding the context helps you choose the right approach.
Absolutely. First, there's what I call surface-level family talk. These are brief, casual moments where someone asks about your family in passing.
Surface-level family talk requires simple answers. You say things like, I have 2 sisters, or my parents live in Chicago, or I'm from a big family. Keep it light and easy.
Then there are connection conversations. These happen when someone genuinely wants to know about your family because they're trying to understand you better. Maybe a new friend or someone you're dating.
Connection conversations require more detail and honesty. You share stories, describe personalities, explain relationships. You use phrases like, my mom is the kind of person who, or growing up with my brother was, or my family taught me.
What about difficult disclosure conversations? Those are when you need to share something sensitive about your family, like divorce, death, or estrangement.
Difficult disclosure conversations require careful language. You want to be honest, but not overly dramatic. You might say, my parents separated when I was young, or I'm not in contact with my father, or we lost my grandmother last year. You state the facts calmly and wait to see how the other person responds before sharing more.
And then there are celebration conversations. These are when you talk about your family with joy and pride, sharing happy memories or funny stories.
Celebration conversations let you express warmth and affection. You say things like, my dad has this hilarious habit of, or family dinners at our house are always chaotic but wonderful, or I'm so lucky to have such supportive parents.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you describe your family in English, you're not just listing people, you're engaging in what I call family storytelling.
Family storytelling. This is important. Explain it.
Family storytelling is when you bring your family to life through anecdotes, descriptions, and emotions. You don't just say, I have a sister. You say, I have a younger sister who's studying medicine. She's incredibly driven and sometimes exhausts me with her energy, but I'm so proud of her.
That's the difference between reporting facts and creating a picture. The second version helps the listener understand not just who your sister is, but what your relationship is like.
Exactly. And native speakers do this naturally, but it's a skill that learners need to practice deliberately.
It really is, and there's another layer to this. When you talk about your family, you're also revealing your values and your culture. We call this cultural family framing.
Cultural family framing. That sounds important.
It is. It means that how you describe your family reflects your cultural background. If you emphasize respect for elders, you're revealing a cultural value. If you focus on independence, that's another value. If you talk about extended family as part of your household, you're showing a different family structure than someone who only mentions parents and siblings.
So when I say I live with my parents, my grandmother, and my aunt, I'm not just giving information, I'm revealing that in my culture, extended family living together is normal.
Exactly, which is why these conversations can feel vulnerable. You're not just sharing who your family members are, you're sharing how you were raised and what you believe.
Let's talk about something that affects many people, complicated family situations, because not everyone has a picture-perfect family, and that's completely normal.
This is so important. There's a phenomenon I call family complexity shame.
Family complexity shame. Define it.
Family complexity shame is the feeling that your family situation isn't good enough or normal enough to share. Maybe your parents are divorced, maybe you were raised by grandparents, maybe you have half-siblings or step-parents. You feel embarrassed because it doesn't match the simple story people expect.
But here's the thing. Complicated families are incredibly common. Divorce rates are high, people remarry, families blend and change. There's no single normal anymore.
Exactly. So how do you talk about a complicated family situation without feeling ashamed?
I think you start with what I call matter-of-fact framing. You state your situation simply and confidently, without apologizing or over-explaining.
Matter-of-fact framing. Explain that.
Matter-of-fact framing means you present your family structure as a neutral fact, not as something unusual or problematic. Instead of saying, "My parents are divorced, unfortunately," you just say, "My parents are divorced. I spend time with both of them." You remove the judgment.
That's powerful because when you present something as normal, other people tend to accept it as normal too. You set the tone.
Exactly. And you can use phrases like, "I come from a blended family," or "I was raised by my grandparents," or "I have step-siblings," without any negative framing. These are just facts about your life.
Now, let's talk about vocabulary because having the right words makes these conversations so much easier. What are some basic phrases for introducing your family?
You can start with, "I come from a family of," or "I have," or "I was raised by," or "I grew up with." These are your foundation phrases.
And for describing family members specifically?
You can say, "My relation is," and then add personality traits, like, "My mother is warm and caring," or "My brother is outgoing and funny," or "My father is quiet but thoughtful."
What about describing relationships between family members?
Try phrases like, "We're very close," or "We have our ups and downs," or "We don't see each other often," or "We're working on our relationship." These show the quality of the connection.
Now, what about when someone asks if you're close to your family? That's a loaded question.
It really is, because close means different things to different people and different cultures. In some cultures, you're expected to talk to your family every day. In others, talking once a week is normal.
So if you are close, you can say, yes, we're very close. We talk almost every day. Or we're tight-knit. We rely on each other a lot. Or family is everything to me.
And if you're not close, you can say, "We're not as close as we used to be," or "We have a bit of distance between us," or "We keep in touch but we're independent," or simply, "Not particularly, but that's okay."
That last one is important, but that's okay. It acknowledges that not being close isn't a failure. It's just your reality.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something sensitive: how to describe difficult family members without being mean or disrespectful.
Oh, this is tricky because sometimes you have family members who are genuinely difficult, but you don't want to trash talk them, especially to people who don't know them.
Right. So you use what I call diplomatic description. Just like with workplace situations, you can be honest without being harsh.
Diplomatic description for family. Walk us through it.
If a family member is controlling, you might say, "They have strong opinions," or "They like things done a certain way." If someone is irresponsible, you say, "They're still figuring things out," or "They march to their own drum." You acknowledge the reality without being cruel.
That's generous but honest. You're not lying, but you're framing things in a more understanding way.
Exactly. And sometimes you need to say, "We have different personalities," or "We don't always see eye to eye." These phrases acknowledge conflict without dwelling on it.
What about describing family traditions? Because that's a big part of family life.
Family traditions are wonderful to talk about because they're usually positive and they give insight into your culture. You can say, "In my family, we always," or "It's tradition in our household to," or "Every year we," like, "Every Sunday we have a big family dinner," or "It's tradition in our family to celebrate birthdays with homemade cake," or "We always gather for the holidays no matter what."
Those examples bring your family to life. They show what makes your family unique and what values you share.
Now, let's talk about something that comes up a lot: comparing families. Someone might say, "Your family sounds so different from mine." How do you respond to that?
Family comparison can be awkward because it sometimes carries judgment, but you can respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. Say something like, "Every family is different. What's yours like?" You turn it into an opportunity for connection.
That's smart. You acknowledge the difference without making it a competition or a problem.
Right, because ultimately there's no better or worse when it comes to families, just different.
Now, I want to address something really important. What do you say when someone asks about family members who have passed away?
Oh, this is such a sensitive topic, and it comes up more often than people realize, especially as we get older.
How do you handle it when someone innocently asks, "How are your parents?" and one of them has died?
You can be straightforward but gentle. Say, "My mother passed away a few years ago, but my father is doing well." You answer honestly, but you include something positive so the conversation doesn't become too heavy unless you want it to.
And if the loss is recent and painful, you can say, "I lost my relation recently," or "We're still grieving," or "It's been a difficult time." These phrases communicate that it's fresh and you might not want to discuss details.
And most people will respect that and offer condolences without pushing for more information.
Exactly. You can control how much you share by the language you use and the tone you set.
Now, let's talk about a question that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Do you have kids, or are you planning to have kids?
Oh boy, this question is so loaded for so many reasons. Maybe you can't have kids, maybe you don't want kids, maybe you're trying and it's not happening, maybe it's none of their business.
So, how do you respond without being rude, but also without sharing more than you want to?
If you don't want to discuss it, you can say, "Not at the moment," or "That's personal," or "We're happy with how things are." These responses are polite but firm boundaries.
And if someone pushes after that?
You can be more direct. "I'd rather not discuss it," or "That's private." You don't owe anyone an explanation about your reproductive choices.
That's really important for learners to know. In English-speaking cultures, it's becoming more acceptable to set boundaries, even on topics that used to be considered fair game.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about siblings, because sibling relationships are so unique and complex.
Sibling dynamics are fascinating. You can be incredibly close to a sibling or feel like strangers, even though you grew up in the same house.
Right. So when someone asks, "Do you have siblings?" you can give a simple answer. "Yes, I have 2 brothers," or "I'm an only child," or "I have 1 sister."
But if they ask follow-up questions like, "Are you close?" that's when you need more nuanced language.
If you're close, you say, "We're best friends," or "We talk all the time," or "I can't imagine life without them." If you're not close, you say, "We're very different people," or "We've grown apart," or "We're cordial but not close."
What about birth order? Does that come up in conversation?
It does sometimes. People might ask, "Are you the oldest?" or "Where do you fall in the family?" And there are stereotypes about birth order that people reference, like, "Oh, you're a middle child. That explains it."
Those stereotypes are usually said jokingly, right? Like, oldest children are responsible, middle children are peacemakers, youngest children are spoiled.
Usually, yes, and you can play along with the joke or dismiss it. Say something like, "Yep, classic oldest child behavior," or "I don't really believe in birth order stereotypes."
Let's talk about something that's changed a lot, the definition of family, because family doesn't always mean biological relatives anymore.
This is so important. Modern families include chosen family, found family, families of friends. The concept has expanded beautifully.
So, when someone asks about your family, you might include people who aren't related to you by blood. You might say, "My best friend is like a sister to me," or "I consider my roommates my family."
And that's completely valid. In English, we even have phrases for this. We say chosen family, or family of choice, or my people.
Those phrases are relatively new, but they're becoming more common, especially among younger speakers.
Right. And they acknowledge that family is about connection and care, not just biology.
Now let's talk about in-laws, because if you're married or in a long-term relationship, people will ask about your partner's family.
In-law relationships are their own special category. They can be wonderful or challenging or anything in between.
How do you describe your relationship with in-laws?
If it's good, you say, "I get along great with my in-laws," or "They've welcomed me into the family," or "I'm lucky to have them." If it's difficult, you say, "We're still getting to know each other," or "We have different communication styles," or "It's a work in progress."
What about the stereotypical difficult mother-in-law? Is that still a thing people joke about?
Yes, but you want to be careful with those jokes. Making fun of your in-laws, even jokingly, can create awkwardness, especially if you don't know your audience well.
Good point. Better to keep it neutral or positive, especially in mixed company.
Now let's address something that many learners experience, having family in another country. How do you talk about that?
This is common for immigrants and people who've moved for work or study. You might say, my family is back in country, or I'm here, but my family's overseas.
And people will often ask, do you miss them? How do you answer that honestly?
You can say every day, or yes, but we video chat often, or it's hard being away from them, or I visit when I can.
These responses acknowledge the challenge without being overly sad.
What if someone asks, why don't you just go back?
That's a frustrating question because it oversimplifies a complex situation. You can say, it's not that simple, or I've built a life here, or this is where my opportunities are.
And you don't need to justify your choices beyond that. Let's talk about something fun, family stories. Every family has stories that get told over and over. How do you share those in English?
Family stories are great for conversation because they're entertaining and they reveal family personality. You set them up with phrases like, there's this story my family always tells about, or one of my favorite memories is when...
And you tell the story like you'd tell any story, with details, emotion, maybe some humor. You bring people along for the ride.
Exactly. And often these stories have a lesson or they explain something about your family dynamic.
What about family quirks? Those little weird things every family does that seem normal to you but strange to outsiders.
Oh, family quirks are wonderful. You can talk about them with affection, like, my family has this weird tradition where, or my dad does this funny thing where. These humanize your family and make them memorable. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about something we touched on earlier, boundaries. How do you politely decline to answer family questions you find too personal?
This is crucial because people don't always realize when they're being intrusive. They might think they're just being friendly or making conversation.
So if someone asks something you don't want to answer, you have options. You can redirect. I'd rather not get into that, but I'd love to hear about your family. You acknowledge the question but move on.
You can also be direct. That's pretty personal. Or, I'm not comfortable discussing that. Or simply, I'd rather not say. A polite but firm no.
And if someone pushes after that, then they're being rude, and you can just repeat your boundary. Like I said, I'd rather not discuss it. You don't need to explain or apologize.
That's important. Boundaries are healthy and normal, and you have every right to maintain your privacy. Let me ask you something personal, John. What's your favorite thing about your family?
Oh, that's a nice question. I think my favorite thing is our sense of humor. We laugh a lot together. Even when things are difficult, we can usually find something to laugh about. It's how we cope and how we connect.
I love that. Humor is such a gift in a family. What about you, Maya? What's your favorite thing about your family? For me, it's resilience. My family has been through a lot, and we've always found a way to keep going. We support each other through hard times. That strength is something I carry with me always.
That's beautiful, Maya. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
And that's really what this episode is about, finding the words to share the people who shaped us. Whether that relationship is simple or complicated, close or distant, it's yours.
So we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, tell us about your family. Use some of the phrases we discussed today. Share something funny, something meaningful, something true. And don't worry about perfect grammar or perfect English. Just practice expressing who your family is and what they mean to you. We'll read every comment and respond.
Because your family's story matters. Whether it's traditional or unconventional, big or small, happy or complicated, it's yours, and it deserves to be told.
If you found this conversation helpful and learned some new ways to talk about your family, please give us a thumbs up.
And share this video with someone who's learning English. Maybe someone who has a beautiful family story but struggles to express it. This might give them the language they need.
Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next episode. We're going to keep exploring real communication, real relationships, real life.
Until next time, stay nerdy, stay curious, and be proud of where you come from.
See ya!
Bye, everyone.